Black Maid told the cold, wealthy CO, "I'm a virgin," and his heart broke before he even touched her. The question hit her like a slap. She straightened up, clutching the shirt against her chest like armor. "That's not really your business, is it? Have you ever met someone whose pain you could feel before they even spoke?" Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story. The night storm rolled over Manhattan when Cole Harrington found his new maid folding his clothes in the dark and discovered she was hiding more than just his secrets. Lightning cracked across the sky like God's whip as Cole's black Tesla pulled through the gates of his Hamptons estate. He wasn't supposed to be here. The board meeting had ended 3 hours ago, but something about the empty penthouse made his skin crawl tonight. Maybe it was the storm, or maybe it was the fact that his assistant had hired someone new without telling him. The mansion sat in darkness, except for one window glowing on the second floor. Cole killed the engine and sat for a moment, watching rain streak down his windshield. 34 years old, worth more than most small countries, and he was hiding in his car like a teenager afraid to go inside his own house. His Italian leather shoes clicked against marble as he stepped into the foyer. The alarm system showed it had been disarmed at 6 p.m. Whoever was here had the code. Cole loosened his tie and headed upstairs, following the light coming from the guest room. That's when he saw her. She stood with her back to him, folding one of his white dress shirts with the kind of care people usually reserve for wedding dresses or baby clothes. Her dark skin seemed to absorb the lamplight, and her hair was pulled back in a way that showed the elegant curve of her neck. She wore simple black pants and a white blouse, the uniform his assistant probably told her to buy. Cole cleared his throat. She spun around so fast the shirt fell to the floor, and for the first time in years, Cole Harrington was completely speechless. Not because she was beautiful, though she was in that natural way that didn't need makeup or designer clothes. No, what stopped him cold were her eyes. They held the kind of pain he recognized from his own mirror on the worst nights. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harrington," she said, her voice carrying just a hint of Georgia honey. "I didn't know you were coming tonight. Who are you?" "Aaliyah Brooks. Your assistant hired me yesterday." She bent to pick up the fallen shirt, and that's when he saw it, a jagged scar across the back of her left hand that looked like someone had tried to write their name with a broken bottle. "What happened to your hand?" The question hit her like a slap. She straightened up, clutching the shirt against her chest like armor. "That's not really your business, is it?" Cole stepped closer, and she stepped back. The dance continued until her shoulders hit the wall. "Everything that happens in my house is my business." She looked up at him, way up, since he had at least a foot on her, and something in her expression shifted. The fear was still there, but underneath it was something harder, something that had survived worse than him. "You want to know about my hand?" Her voice cracked, but her eyes never left his. "Fina, I got this scar running from a man who thought he owned me. And before you ask your next question, yes, I'm still running. Yes, I'm still scared. And yes," she took a shaky breath, "I'm a virgin, and I don't trust men." The words hung between them like a live wire. Cole felt something shift in his chest, something that had nothing to do with desire and everything to do with recognition. Here was someone else who understood that safety was just an illusion rich people sold to poor people. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're going to find out anyway." She lifted her chin. "Not like you always do, so I might as well control the narrative. Have you ever met someone whose pain you could feel before they even spoke? Someone who made you want to protect them, even when they were busy protecting themselves? Tell me about that moment in the comments." Thunder shook the house, and the lights flickered. In that moment of darkness, Cole saw something that made his breath catch. She wasn't afraid of the storm. She was afraid of him, not because he might hurt her, but because she might let him. "I should go," she whispered. "Stay." The word came out rougher than he intended. She looked at him like he'd just asked her to jump off a cliff. "The storm's getting worse," he added, trying to sound reasonable instead of desperate. "The roads won't be safe." As she backed toward the door, whispering, "I shouldn't be here," Cole realized with startling clarity that he didn't want her to leave. Not the estate, not the room, not his sight. But the phone in her pocket started buzzing with calls from unknown number, and her face went white with terror that had nothing to do with thunder. She served him breakfast like nothing happened, but her hand shook every time thunder rumbled outside, and Cole noticed everything. Morning light filtered through the dining room's floor-to-ceiling windows, turning everything gold and civilized. You'd never know that 12 hours ago, this same room had felt like a battlefield. Cole sat at the head of the mahogany table that could seat 20, watching Aaliyah move around him like he was made of glass and dynamite. She'd been here since 6 a.m. He knew because the coffee was perfect, not too strong, not too weak, and the eggs were still warm. She'd found the good china, the stuff his mother had insisted he buy, but never use. Each plate was positioned with mathematical precision, each piece of silverware exactly where Emily Post would have approved. You didn't have to use the formal service, he said as she poured orange juice into a crystal glass that probably cost more than most people's rent. Mrs. Chen's instructions were very specific. Her voice was steady, professional. If he hadn't been watching her hands, he might have believed the composed act. But Cole Harrington didn't build a tech empire by missing details. Her left hand, the one with the scar, trembled every time she reached for something. She kept glancing at the windows like she expected someone to come crashing through. And she hadn't eaten anything, despite the fact that she'd cooked enough breakfast for 3 people. "Sit down," he said. "I'm sorry." "Sit. Eat. You made enough food for a small army." She looked at him like he'd suggested they go skydiving naked. "That's not. I don't eat with employers." "House rule number 1, Cole said, cutting into his eggs Benedict with more force than necessary. "No one goes hungry in my house. That includes the help." The word help made her flinch, and Cole immediately wished he could take it back. But Aaliyah Brooks wasn't the type to let things slide. "Is that what I am? The help?" Their eyes met across the table, and Cole felt that same electric charge from last night. "I don't know what you are yet." She finally sat down, perched on the edge of the chair like she was ready to run. She took exactly 3 bites of toast and 2 sips of coffee before her phone buzzed. Cole watched her check the message, watched her face go pale, watched her delete it without responding. "Everything okay?" "Fine." The lie came out too fast. Cole's phone rang. His assistant, probably calling to check on the new hire. He almost didn't answer, but something about the way Aaliyah was watching him made him curious. "Mr. Harrington? I hope I'm not calling too early." Mrs. Chen's voice carried that particular tone that meant trouble. "I wanted to ask about your new staff member." "What about her?" "Well, someone called yesterday asking questions. Said they were verifying employment for a background check, but they knew things about Ms. Brooks that weren't in her application." Cole's blood went cold. Across the table, Aaliyah was staring at him with the kind of intensity that could start fires. "What kind of things?" "Personal things. About her family. About why she left Atlanta." The phone almost slipped from Cole's hand. "Atlanta. Not Georgia. Atlanta specifically." He looked at Aaliyah, who was now standing with her back to him, staring out at the gardens like they held the secrets of the universe. "Mrs. Chun, I need you to do something for me. Have you ever wanted to protect someone you barely knew? What made you feel that way? Drop a comment and let me know." After he hung up, the kitchen felt smaller. Aaliyah was washing dishes that were already clean, her movements sharp and efficient. "You're from Atlanta," he said. Her hands stilled. "Lots of people are from Atlanta. Not lots of people have strangers calling about their background." When she thought he wasn't looking, Cole saw her slip something in her apron pocket, a letter with North Carolina postmark and urgent stamped in red. Before he could ask about it, his phone rang again. This time it was his head of security, and the first words out of his mouth made Cole's world tilt sideways. "Sir, we have a problem. Someone's been asking questions about your staff, and they're not being subtle about it." He wasn't supposed to hear her midnight conversation, but some secrets are too dangerous to whisper. Cole couldn't sleep. He tried everything: a cold shower, warm milk, even counting backwards from 1,000. Nothing worked. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Aaliyah's face when she'd said those words. "I'm a virgin, and I don't trust men." The pain in her voice had cut through him like broken glass. At 11:47 p.m., he gave up and wandered down to the library. The room smelled like leather and old books. the kind of comfort money could actually buy. He poured 2 fingers of whiskey, the good stuff, aged longer than some of his employees have been alive, and settled into the chair by the window. That's when he heard her voice. At first, he thought he was imagining things. The library shared a wall with the staff quarters, but the insulation was supposed to be soundproof. Then he heard it again, clearer this time. Aaliyah was on the phone, and she was crying. Cole knew he should leave. Give her privacy. Walk away and pretend he hadn't heard anything. But something about the desperation in her voice made his feet grow roots. I know, she was saying. But you have to stay hidden just a little longer. Cole set down his whiskey and moved closer to the wall. The rational part of his brain, the part that had built a fortune by making smart decisions, screamed at him to stop. The other part, the part that had been dead since his parents' car accident, whispered that maybe this was important. No, baby, I can't come get you yet. It's not safe. Baby, she was talking to someone she loved. Cole's chest tightened with something that felt dangerously close to jealousy. Listen to me, Aaliyah continued, her voice breaking. I need 2 more weeks, maybe 3. The man I'm working for, he's not what I expected. He might actually help us if I can figure out how to ask. Cole's hand pressed against the wall, like he could somehow reach through it and comfort her. They're getting closer, aren't they? The fear in her voice made Cole's blood run cold. I can feel it. Every time the phone rings, every time someone looks at me too long. They know I'm here. Who is they? And what do they want with a maid from Georgia who was so scared she shook every time thunder rolled? No, don't come here, Aaliyah said, panic creeping into her voice. If they're watching you, they'll follow. We can't risk it. Not when we're this close. Close to what? Cole's mind raced through possibilities, none of them good. There was a long pause, and then Aaliyah spoke again, her voice so quiet he had to strain to hear it. I love you too. Stay strong. I'm going to fix this, I promise. The line went dead, and Cole heard something that made his heart break. The sound of a woman crying alone in the dark, trying to muffle her sobs with what was probably a pillow. When someone you care about is clearly in trouble, but won't tell you why, do you push or wait? Share your experience below. Cole stood in that library for 20 more minutes, listening to her cry and hating himself for every second of it. When the sounds finally stopped, he crept back to his room like a thief who'd stolen something precious. But sleep still wouldn't come, because now he had questions that felt like acid in his stomach. Who was hunting Aaliyah Brooks? What had she done that made her so afraid? And why did the thought of someone hurting her make him want to burn down the world? At 3 a.m., he made a decision that would change everything. He opened his laptop and typed her name into the private investigation database he used for corporate espionage. The search took less than 30 seconds. What he found made him delete the search immediately and stare at the blank screen for an hour. But it was too late to unknow the truth. Aaliyah Brooks wasn't just running from someone. She was running from people who wanted her dead. And the reason they wanted her dead had everything to do with him. The private investigator brought him answers he didn't want about a woman he couldn't stop thinking about. Marcus Webb had the kind of face that forgot itself the moment you looked away. Perfect for a man who made his living finding things people wanted to stay lost. He sat across from Cole's desk at 7 a.m. sharp, a manila folder thick with secrets between them like a bomb with a very short fuse. You're not going to like this, Webb said, sliding the folder across mahogany that cost more than most people's cars. Cole's coffee went cold in his hand. Through his office windows, Manhattan spread out like a kingdom he'd built from code and ruthless ambition. But right now, all of that felt as fragile as spun glass. Tell me, Webb opened the folder. The first thing Cole saw was a photograph. Aaliyah, but younger, maybe 19. She was standing outside a courthouse in Atlanta, wearing a yellow dress that made her look like sunshine. A man in an expensive suit had his hand on her shoulder, and she was smiling. Actually smiling, like the world hadn't tried to break her yet. Aaliyah Brooks, 24, born in Savannah, moved to Atlanta at 18 to live with her older sister, Zura. Webb's voice carried the practiced neutrality of someone who delivered bad news for a living. Sister worked as a bookkeeper for several high-end businesses, including one you know. Cole's stomach dropped. Which one? Harrison and Associates. Your former business partner's consulting firm. The words hit Cole like a physical blow. David Harrison, his college roommate, his best man, the person he'd trusted with half his company before discovering David had been stealing from their clients for 3 years. The scandal had nearly destroyed everything Cole had built. The FBI investigation had gone on for months, and in the end, David had disappeared with $40 million and left Cole to clean up the mess. Keep going. Webb flipped to the next page. More photographs, these ones grainier, taken from a distance. Aaliyah's sister walking into a federal building. Aaliyah herself sitting in what looked like a lawyer's office, papers spread across the table in front of her. Zara Brooks witnessed something she shouldn't have. Financial documents being shredded, phone calls about moving money offshore. She made copies before she quit. Smart girl. Made copies of what? Evidence that could have put David Harrison in federal prison for 20 years instead of letting him disappear to a country without extradition laws. Cole's hands were shaking. He set down his coffee before he spilled it all over evidence that was rewriting everything he thought he knew about the woman sleeping in his guest quarters. Where's the sister now? Webb's expression darkened. Missing. Has been for 6 months. Last anyone heard, she was in protective custody, but something went wrong. The safe house was compromised. The room felt like it was shrinking. Cole loosened his tie, but it didn't help. And Aaliyah? Running. Has been ever since her sister disappeared. David's people think she knows where the evidence is hidden. They've been hunting her across 3 states. Do they know she's here? Webb nodded grimly. As of yesterday, yes. My sources say they're planning to make contact within the week. Cole stood up so fast his chair rolled backward and hit the window. The sound echoed through the office like a gunshot. You said they think she knows where the evidence is. Does she? That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Webb closed the folder. But here's what I find interesting. Aaliyah Brooks applied to be your maid 3 weeks ago. She specifically requested this job, at this house working for you. The world stopped spinning. Cole felt like someone had just told him gravity was optional. She came here on purpose. Looks that way. Question is why. Either she's working with the people hunting her sister, or she's trying to protect me. Have you ever discovered someone was protecting you when you thought you were protecting them? How did it change your relationship? Let me know in the comments. Webb stood to leave, but paused at the door. Mr. Harrington, whatever you're thinking about doing, be careful. These aren't the kind of people who negotiate. As the door closed behind Webb, Cole stared at the manila folder that had just turned his world upside down. Because now he understood why Aaliyah Brooks had looked at him with such pain in her eyes. She wasn't just running from danger. She was standing between him and people who would destroy everything he'd built to get what they wanted. And she was doing it alone. She found him waiting in the kitchen at 3 a.m. And for the first time since she arrived, Cole Harrington looked as scared as she felt. Aaliyah couldn't sleep either. The nightmares had been getting worse. Flashes of her sister's face, the sound of glass breaking, voices in the dark promising things that made her skin crawl. So she'd given up on rest and decided to bake bread. Kneading dough was the only thing that quieted her mind anymore. But when she padded barefoot into the kitchen, Cole was already there. He sat at the marble island in a white t-shirt and pajama pants, looking nothing like the ruthless CEO who'd built an empire from ones and zeros. His dark hair was messy, like he'd been running his hands through it, and his eyes held the same haunted look she recognized from her own mirror. Couldn't sleep? She asked softly. He looked up at her, and something in his expression made her forget to breathe. We need to talk. Those 4 words carried more weight than granite. Aaliyah's hands went cold, but she forced herself to move to the pantry. Pulling out flour and yeast like this was any other sleepless night. About what? About David Harrison. The bag of flour slipped from her hands and hit the floor with a soft thump, sending white powder across the dark tiles like snow. Cole was beside her in seconds, helping her clean up the mess, his hands covering hers as they worked. How do you know that name? She whispered. The same way you know mine. I'm guessing. His voice was gentle, but there was steel underneath. The question is, how long have you known who I really am? Aaliyah sat back on her heels, flour dusting her black leggings, and looked at him, really looked at him. The strong jaw, the intelligent eyes, the way he carried himself like someone used to being in control. Even in pajamas, he looked like exactly what he was, a man who could buy and sell small countries. Since the day I applied for this job, the honesty hung between them like a bridge they could either cross or burn. Why? Cole asked. Why come here? Why put yourself in danger? Because you're in danger too. The words came out in a rush, like she'd been holding them back for weeks. David's not just stealing money anymore. He's eliminating loose ends. And you're the biggest loose end of all. Cole's face went pale. What do you mean? Aaliyah stood up, brushing flour from her hands. My sister wasn't just a bookkeeper, Cole. She was David's inside person on your accounts. She helped him steal $40 million from your company, but she didn't know what she was doing until it was too late. The kitchen felt smaller now, intimate in a way that had nothing to do with the soft lighting and everything to do with the secrets finally finding air. When Zara realized what David had done, she made copies of everything. Every transfer, every forged signature, every fake invoice. She was going to turn him in, but David found out. Where is she now? Aaliyah's voice broke. I don't know. The FBI was supposed to protect her, but someone leaked her location. She's been missing for 6 months. Cole reached for her then, his hands framing her face like she was something precious and breakable. And you've been running ever since. I came here because I thought if I could warn you, if I could get close enough to figure out how to help, maybe I could save us both. Tears were rolling down her cheeks now, and she didn't care. But they found me anyway. They always do. Hey, Cole said softly, his thumbs wiping away her tears. Look at me. She did, and what she saw in his eyes made her knees weak. Not pity, not fear, but something that looked dangerously like understanding. When was the last time someone's honesty about their fears made you braver? Tell me about that turning point in the comments below. Nobody's going to hurt you, he said, his voice low and fierce. Not while I'm breathing. You don't understand. These people don't just threaten. They eliminate problems. Then we eliminate them first. The words should have sounded ridiculous coming from a tech CEO in designer pajamas. Instead, they sounded like a promise written in blood and sealed with something that felt dangerously close to love. When she whispered, I can't let anything happen to you because of me, Cole realized with crystal clarity that it was too late. Not for his business, not for the scandal, but for his heart. Because somewhere between her first confession and this moment, protecting her had become more important than protecting his empire. The moment he reached for her hand, 24 years of walls came crashing down, and neither of them was ready for what lay beneath. The kitchen clock ticked past 4 a.m. as they stood there, flour still dusting the dark tiles around their feet, like evidence of everything that had just broken open between them. Aaliyah's tears had stopped, but her hands were shaking again. Not from fear this time, but from something that felt infinitely more dangerous. Cole's thumbs were still tracing the tracks her tears had left on her cheeks. His touch was so gentle it made her chest ache. No one had ever touched her like that before. Like she was worth something. Like she mattered. Show me, he said quietly. Show you what? The scar. The real story. Aaliyah pulled back, but he didn't let her go far. His hands slid down to capture hers, and she felt the exact moment he found a raised skin on the back of her left hand. His fingers traced the jagged line like he was reading Braille. A bottle, she said, the words coming out barely above a whisper. My mother's boyfriend when I was 16. He was drunk, and I was trying to stop him from hitting her again. Cole's jaw went tight, but his touch stayed gentle. Where is he now? Prison. 3 to 5 for assault. She tried to pull her hand away, but he held on. That's when Zara and I decided to leave Savannah. We thought Atlanta would be safer. And your mother? Still with him. Some women never learn. The bitterness in her own voice surprised her. She'd spent years trying not to become that woman. The one who stayed with men who hurt her, who believed love was supposed to come with bruises and apologies. Is that why you don't trust men? Cole asked. Aaliyah looked up at him. Taking it away, his dark hair fell across his forehead, the concern in his eyes that seemed genuine enough to believe in. "Wouldn't you?" Instead of answering, he lifted her scarred hand to his lips and pressed the softest kiss to the damaged skin. The gesture was so unexpected, so tender, that Aaliyah felt something crack open inside her chest. "I used to think the scar made me ugly," she whispered. "It doesn't make you ugly." His voice was rough. "It makes you a survivor." The space between them seemed to shrink until she could feel the heat coming off his body, could smell his soap and something else that was just him. When he cupped her face again, she didn't pull away. "Aaliyah," he said her name like a prayer. Don't what? Don't look at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you want to kiss me." Cole's eyes dropped to her lips, and she felt her stomach flip over itself. "What if I do? Have you ever felt someone's touch heal something you didn't know was broken? Share that moment of unexpected healing in the comments." "You don't know what you're asking for," she said. "Then tell me." "I've never." She took a shaky breath. "I've never let anyone that close. What if I don't know how? What if I disappoint you?" Cole's answer was to close the distance between them, his lips brushing against hers so softly she might have imagined it. But then he did it again and again until she was kissing him back like her life depended on it. It wasn't the desperate, hungry kiss she'd seen in movies. It was careful and sweet and absolutely devastating. Cole kissed her like she was something precious, like he had all the time in the world to learn exactly what made her sigh against his mouth. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Aaliyah felt like she was seeing the world in color for the first time. "That was my first kiss," she admitted. Cole's eyes went dark. Good. It means no one else has touched you like this." His forehead rested against hers. "It means you're mine to discover." The possessiveness in his voice should have scared her. Instead, it made heat pool low in her belly in a way that was entirely new and completely terrifying. "Cole," she started to say, but her phone erupted with messages that made her blood freeze. "We found her location. Moving tonight." She pulled away from Cole's arms, knowing that saving her sister might mean losing the first man she'd ever wanted to stay with. But as she stared at the messages, one terrifying thought consumed her. What if tonight was the last night she'd ever feel safe enough to be touched? She had 6 hours to save her sister and a lifetime to regret what she'd have to sacrifice to do it. The text messages kept coming, each one like a nail in a coffin Aaliyah wasn't ready to build. She stood in Cole's kitchen, still tasting him on her lips, while her phone buzzed with coordinates and timestamps that meant everything was about to change. "We have to go," she said, her voice steady despite the chaos in her chest. "Now." Cole was already moving, his business mind kicking into gear like a machine built for crisis. "Where?" "North Carolina. There's a safe house about 3 hours from here." Aaliyah's fingers flew across her phone screen, pulling up maps and messages. "My sister's been hiding there with a family friend, but they found her." "Who found her?" "David's cleanup crew." The words tasted like poison. "They don't just eliminate witnesses, Cole. They eliminate entire bloodlines." Cole's face went hard in a way that reminded Aaliyah he hadn't built his empire by being nice. "Get your things. We leave in 10 minutes. "We? You think I'm letting you walk into that alone? This isn't your fight." Cole moved closer, his hands framing her face again. "Yes, it is. They're coming after me next, remember? Your sister and I are on the same list." Aaliyah wanted to argue, but there wasn't time. And honestly, the thought of driving 3 hours alone to face the people who'd been hunting her family made her stomach turn over itself. They took Cole's Tesla, black, fast, and loaded with enough technology to track a satellite. Aaliyah sat in the passenger seat, directing him through back roads while her phone stayed connected to her sister's burner number. "Tell me about her," Cole said as they crossed into New Jersey. "Zara," Aaliyah's voice softened. "She's everything I'm not. Smart with numbers, confident, brave enough to stand up to people who could destroy her. She raised me after our mother chose her boyfriend over her daughters. Sounds like she raised you well." She tried. But when David offered her twice her usual salary to do his books, she thought it was just good business. She didn't know she was helping him steal from his clients until it was too late. Cole's hands tightened on the steering wheel. When did she figure it out? The night she found the fake invoices with your company's name on them. She called me, crying, saying she'd helped steal from the one person who'd never deserved it. What do you mean? Aaliyah looked at him, taking in his profile in the dashboard lights. She'd been following your story for years. The kid who built a tech empire after his parents died in a car crash. The CEO who never laid off employees, even during the recession. She said you were one of the good ones. What would you do if someone you'd never met was willing to risk everything to protect you? Drop a heart in the comments if that level of loyalty moves you. They drove in silence for another hour before Aaliyah's phone rang. Zara's voice came through the speaker, breathless and scared. "They're here," she whispered. "3 cars, maybe 4. Mr. Johnson's trying to stall them, but they're not falling for it. Where are you?" Aaliyah's voice cracked, hidden in the root cellar. "But Laya, they have pictures. Pictures of you with him." There was a pause. They know about Cole. Aaliyah's blood went cold. Beside her, Cole's face had turned to stone. "Listen to me," Cole said, leaning toward the phone. "This is Cole Harrington. Do you have the evidence?" "Mr. Harrington?" Zara's voice was full of surprise. "You're with my sister? Do you have the evidence?" he repeated. "Yes, everything. Bank records, email chains, audio recordings of David talking about the thefts. It's all on a flash drive." "Good. We're 20 minutes out. Can you hold on that long?" "I think so." "But Mr. Harrington, there's something else. David's not just covering his tracks anymore. He's planning something bigger, something that involves framing you for crimes you didn't commit." The line went dead, and through the windshield, Aaliyah could see the farmhouse in the distance. But she could also see something else that made her heart stop. Headlights cutting through the darkness, moving fast toward the same destination. "We're not the only ones who know where she is," Cole said grimly. "What do we do?" Cole's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "We beat them there." They ran through tobacco fields under starlight, and somewhere between the gunshots and her hand in his, Cole realized he'd found exactly what his empty life was missing. The Tesla's headlights died as Cole killed the engine a quarter-mile from the farmhouse. Through the darkness, they could see the other cars, 3 black SUVs parked like predators around the old White House where Zara was hiding. "Stay behind me," Cole whispered as they crept through the tobacco plants that stretched like green soldiers in every direction. "I'm not hiding while my sister's in danger." "You're not hiding. You're being smart." Cole's voice carried an authority Aaliyah hadn't heard before. "I've been in hostile negotiations. I know how to handle dangerous people. These aren't business rivals, Cole. These are killers." "Then it's a good thing I don't plan on negotiating." They reached the edge of the farmyard just as the front door exploded inward. Men in dark clothes poured into the house like water through a broken dam, and Aaliyah's heart stopped beating. "The cellar," she breathed. "She's in a root cellar behind the house." They moved like shadows around the edge of the property, staying low and quiet. Cole's hand found hers in the darkness, and Aaliyah was surprised by how steady his grip was. How calm he seemed despite the chaos unfolding 50 yards away. The root cellar doors were hidden under an old tarp behind the house. Cole lifted one side, while Aaliyah whispered her sister's name into the darkness below. "Laya." Zara's voice came back, shaky but alive. "It's me. We're getting you out." Zara climbed out of the cellar like she was rising from a grave, covered in dirt, clutching a backpack to her chest but whole. When she saw Cole, her eyes went wide. "You're really him." "Introductions later," Cole said. "Right now we run." But as they turned to head back toward the Tesla, flashlight beams cut through the darkness around them. They were surrounded. Well, a voice called out from behind one of the lights. "Zara Brooks and the famous Cole Harrington. David's going to be so pleased." Cole stepped in front of both women, and Aaliyah felt something shift in the air around him. This wasn't the gentle man who'd kissed her in his kitchen. This was someone who'd fought his way to the top of a brutal industry and stayed there. "Let them go," Cole said. "I'm the one you really want. Actually, we want to drive. And unfortunately, we can't let any of you walk away knowing what you know." That's when Aaliyah heard it. The soft beep of Cole's phone sending a message. He'd been texting someone while they talked. "You know what your problem is?" Cole said conversationally. "You think money and threats are the only kinds of power. And what other kind is there? Cole smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Aaliyah had ever seen. The kind that comes from having the FBI on speed dial. The night exploded with sound. Helicopters, sirens, and voices shouting federal commands through megaphones. The men with flashlights scattered like roaches when the lights came on, but it was too late. They were already surrounded by agents who'd been waiting for Cole's signal. Have you ever found love in the middle of chaos? How did crisis reveal what really mattered? Tell me in the comments below. As federal agents arrested David's crew, Cole pulled both women close. Are you okay? Zara nodded, still clutching her backpack. The evidence? Safe, she said. All of it. Good. Because we're going to put David away. For so long, his great-grandchildren will be collecting Social Security before he sees daylight. But as they walked toward the FBI cars, Aaliyah felt something cold settle in her stomach. Because she knew Cole well enough now to recognize that look in his eyes. He was planning something, and whatever it was going to change everything. What aren't you telling me? She asked as they reached the cars. Cole's answer made her world tilt sideways again. David knows about us now. About you. Which means this isn't over. It's just getting started. And tomorrow, our story is going to be front-page news whether we want it to be or not. In the distance, camera flashes started going off like lightning, and Aaliyah realized with growing horror that their private love was about to become very public scandal. The morning news turned their private love into public scandal, and suddenly the whole world had an opinion about a rich white CEO and his black maid. Aaliyah woke up to the sound of helicopters circling Cole's estate like vultures waiting for something to die. Through the bedroom windows, his bedroom, where she'd spent the night curled against his chest, she could see news vans lined up along the road like a parade of judgment. Don't look, Cole said, his arm tightening around her waist. But it was too late. She'd already seen the headlines scrolling across the news ticker on his bedroom TV. Tech CEO's secret affair with domestic help exposed in FBI raid. Her stomach turned over itself. They make it sound like I'm some kind of scandal. You're not the scandal, Cole said fiercely. The scandal is that David tried to frame me for his crimes, and it backfired. But Aaliyah knew better. She'd grown up black and poor in Georgia. She knew exactly how this story would be told. And it wouldn't matter that she'd helped save Cole's company or that her sister had risked her life to expose the truth. All anyone would see was a maid who'd somehow seduced her wealthy white boss. Cole's phone started ringing at 6 a.m. and didn't stop. His publicist, his lawyers, his board of directors, everyone had opinions about how to handle the situation. Aaliyah listened to half a dozen conversations where she was referred to as the problem or the complication. By 8 a.m., she'd heard enough. I should go, she said, already reaching for her clothes. Go where? Cole caught her wrist. Those reporters will eat you alive. Maybe, but at least they won't be calling you a fool for slumming it with the help. Cole's eyes went dark. Is that what you think this is? Slumming, isn't it? The words came out sharper than she'd intended. Look at the coverage, Cole. Look at what they're saying about us. She grabbed the remote and turned up the volume on the morning show, where a panel of experts was dissecting their relationship like a lab experiment. It's a classic power dynamic, one woman was saying. Rich, powerful man, vulnerable domestic worker. She probably saw an opportunity and took it. But you have to wonder about his judgment, a man added. Getting involved with an employee, especially one connected to a federal investigation, it raises questions about his fitness to run a publicly traded company. How do you stay true to love when everyone's watching and judging? Share your thoughts on handling public pressure in the comments. Aaliyah muted the TV and turned to face Cole. Your board is going to force you to choose, me or your company. We both know which one makes sense. You're right, Cole said quietly. They probably will. The words hit her like a slap, even though she'd expected them. Hearing him agree felt like drowning. But here's what you don't understand, he continued, standing up and moving to his closet. I built that company from nothing. I made those board members rich. And if they think they can tell me who I'm allowed to love, they're about to learn exactly what happens when you threaten something I actually care about. He pulled on a suit, the kind that cost more than most people's cars. and checked his reflection in the mirror. When he turned back to her, he looked like exactly what he was, a man who'd built an empire and wasn't about to let anyone tear it down. "What are you doing?" "Going to war." Cole's smile was sharp enough to cut diamonds. "And you're coming with me?" "Cole, no. This will only make it worse." "Maybe. Or maybe it's time people learn that love doesn't apologize for itself." He held out his hand. "The question is, are you brave enough to stand next to me while I burn down anyone who thinks they can judge us?" When a news anchor announced that the FBI was opening a formal investigation based on evidence provided by domestic staff, Aaliyah realized with cold clarity that she'd become the key witness in a case that would either save Cole's reputation or destroy it forever. But as she looked at his outstretched hand, one thought cut through the fear. If they were going down, at least they'd go down together. She walked into the federal courthouse knowing her words would either free the man she loved or send him to prison, and she'd tell the truth either way. The courthouse steps stretched out like a battlefield. Reporters pressed against police barriers, shouting questions that turned her name into weapons. "Miss Brooks, is it true you seduced Mr. Harrington for information? How long have you been spying on your employer? Are you being paid to testify?" Aaliyah kept her eyes straight ahead as Cole's hand pressed against the small of her back, not to guide her, but to remind her she wasn't alone. She wore a navy blue dress his lawyer had chosen, conservative enough to appear respectable, but not so expensive that it looked like Cole had bought her costume. "Remember," the lawyer had said during the prep session, "stick to the facts. Don't let them bait you. And whatever you do, don't get emotional." But as they climbed those courthouse steps, Aaliyah felt emotion burning in her chest like a furnace. Not fear or anger, because everyone seemed to think she was the victim in this story, when the truth was so much more complicated. The federal courtroom smelled like old wood and broken promises. Aaliyah took her seat in the witness box, raised her right hand, and swore to tell the truth while 24 cameras recorded her every breath. The prosecutor was a woman about her own age with kind eyes and a voice that could cut glass. "Miss Brooks, please tell the court how you came to be employed by Mr. Harrington. I applied for the position specifically. And why did you choose to work for Mr. Harrington in particular?" This was the moment everything depended on. The whole room seemed to hold its breath. "Because my sister had discovered that David Harrison was stealing from Mr. Harrington's company, and I wanted to warn him." The courtroom erupted. The defense attorney objected. The judge called for order. But Aaliyah kept talking, her voice steady and clear. "My sister worked for Mr. Harrison's consulting firm. She discovered evidence that he was embezzling from his clients, including Mr. Harrington. When she tried to report it, Mr. Harrison threatened her life." Objection. Hearsay. Sustained. But the damage was done. Aaliyah had just told a room full of people that she'd gone to Cole's house to protect him, not to seduce him. The prosecutor continued. "Miss Brooks, did Mr. Harrington know about your family's connection to Mr. Harrison when he hired you?" "No. He discovered it on his own and confronted me about it." "And what was his reaction?" Aaliyah looked directly at Cole, sitting in the gallery with his lawyers. His eyes were locked on hers, and she saw something in them that made her chest tight. "He offered to help my sister, even though it put his own safety at risk." "Would you choose truth over safety? Have you ever had to testify to something that could hurt someone you love?" Share your thoughts below. The defense attorney's cross-examination was brutal. He painted her as a gold digger, a manipulator, a woman who'd use any means necessary to escape poverty. He questioned her relationship with Cole, her motives, her credibility. But Aaliyah had grown up fighting for every scrap of dignity she'd ever possessed. She wasn't about to let some lawyer in an expensive suit take that away from her now. "You want to know why I'm here?" she said when he pushed too far. "I'm here because David Harrison stole $40 million and destroyed innocent lives to cover it up. I'm here because my sister risked everything to expose the truth. And yes, I'm here because I fell in love with a man who saw my worth before I believed in it myself." The courtroom was dead silent. "But mostly, I'm here because someone has to stand up and say that poor people matter, that black women matter, that the truth matters, even when it's inconvenient for rich, white men who think they can buy their way out of consequences." When the jury returned with their verdict 3 hours later, guilty on all counts, Cole's smile was brighter than sunlight. But as the media swarmed outside the courthouse, Aaliyah realized the victory came with an unexpected price. Her testimony had made her a hero, but heroes don't always get to keep their quiet, private love stories. 3 months after the trial ended, Aaliyah stood in the marble lobby of Columbia Law School, holding her acceptance letter with trembling hands. The same hands that once folded Cole's shirts now held the key to her future. But why did success feel so complicated? Cole watched her from across the room, his heart swelling with pride and breaking simultaneously. She deserved this opportunity. She'd earned it through her courage, her testimony, her refusal to stay silent. But Columbia meant she'd be in New York full-time, and he'd been offered the CEO position at a tech startup in Silicon Valley. "You're going to take it, right?" he asked, though his voice betrayed his fear. Aaliyah looked up at him, her brown eyes reflecting the lobby's golden light. "What if this changes everything between us? What if I become someone you don't recognize?" The question hung between them like a challenge. Cole stepped closer, his expensive shoes clicking against the floor. "Then I'll fall in love with that person too." But even as he said it, doubt crept into his voice. Would she still need him when she became the lawyer she was meant to be? Would she still want him when she realized her own power? That evening, they sat in his Manhattan penthouse, the city lights twinkling below them like fallen stars. Aaliyah curled against his chest, her fingers tracing patterns on his shirt. "Maya called today," she said quietly. "She's thinking about testifying in another case." 3 more women came forward about David's associates. Cole's arms tightened around her. "That's her choice to make. She asked me something," Aaliyah continued, her voice growing smaller. "She asked if I was happy or if I was just safe. I didn't know how to answer." The question hit Cole like a physical blow. Was that what he'd become to her? Safety instead of passion? Protection instead of partnership? "Are you happy?" he asked, barely breathing. Aaliyah tilted her head up to look at him. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "I'm terrified that I'll go to law school and realize I don't need you anymore. I'm terrified that you'll move to California and realize you don't want me anymore. I'm terrified that we built something beautiful in the middle of chaos, and now that the chaos is gone." She didn't finish, but she didn't need to. Cole understood. They'd fallen in love during a crisis. What happened when there was no more danger to face together? "So what do we do?" he asked. Aaliyah sat up, her decision crystallizing in her eyes. "We take the risk. I go to Columbia. You take that job if you want it. And we find out if what we have is real enough to survive success." Have you ever had to choose between love and your dreams? Tell us in the comments what you would do in Aaliyah's situation. And if you're loving this story, hit that like button and subscribe for more. But as they held each other that night, neither of them mentioned the job offer Cole had actually received. Not in California, but in Atlanta. The same Atlanta where Aaliyah's family lived. The same Atlanta where her story began. Some secrets, even between lovers, were harder to share than others. 6 months into law school, Aaliyah discovered that being brilliant and being confident were 2 different things entirely. She could debate constitutional law with professors twice her age, but she still felt like that scared girl from Georgia every time she walked into the faculty lounge. Cole had taken the Atlanta job without telling her, a decision that both saved and complicated everything. "You did what?" Aaliyah's voice echoed through her Columbia dorm room as Cole's confession hung between them over FaceTime. His face on her laptop screen looked guilty and hopeful simultaneously. "I couldn't leave you. I tried to convince myself I could, but every night I went to bed knowing I'd wake up 1,000 miles away from you felt like dying a little." "But Atlanta?" Aaliyah stood up, pacing the small room. "You hate the South. You said the business culture there was too slow, too personal. Maybe I need slow. Maybe I need personal." Cole leaned forward, his eyes intense even through the screen. "Maybe I need a place where we can build something together instead of just surviving." The words hit deeper than Aaliyah expected. For months, she'd been drowning in case studies and legal briefs, barely keeping her head above water academically, while emotionally, she felt like she was floating. Success was lonelier than she'd imagined. I can't be the reason you changed your whole life, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. You're not the reason, Cole replied. You're the inspiration. That weekend, Cole flew to New York. Not to her dorm. That felt too much like he was invading her space, but to a small hotel in Manhattan. They met at Central Park, the same place where their story had become public months ago. Walking along the reservoir, Aaliyah felt the tension she'd been carrying in her shoulders slowly release. Law school is harder than I thought it would be, she admitted. In what way? Everyone assumes I'm there because of the trial. Like I'm some kind of charity case or media darling. She kicked at a loose stone on the path. Half the students treat me like a celebrity, and the other half act like I don't belong. Cole stopped walking. Do you belong? The question surprised her with its directness. I don't know anymore. My grades are good. Actually, they're excellent. But I feel like I'm playing dress-up in someone else's life. You felt that way in my house, too, at first. That was different. Was it? Cole turned to face her fully. Or are you just afraid that if you admit you belong somewhere, someone might try to take it away from you again? The observation cut close to the bone. Aaliyah had been holding herself apart, ready to run if things went wrong. It was a survival instinct that had served her well, but it was also keeping her from fully embracing her new life. That night, in Cole's hotel room, they made love with a desperate tenderness that felt like reclaiming something they'd almost lost. Afterward, as they lay tangled in expensive sheets, Cole traced the scar on Aaliyah's hand, the one that had started everything. I want to ask you something, he said quietly, and I want you to think about it, not just react. Aaliyah's heart rate quickened. Okay, move in with me. In Atlanta, keep going to Columbia. We can make it work with travel, remote classes, whatever you need. But stop living like you're temporary everywhere. The offer hung between them like a bridge. One that could lead to something beautiful or could collapse under the weight of expectations. What would you do? Would you choose love or independence? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to share this story with someone who believes in taking chances. Aaliyah didn't answer that night, but she didn't say no either. The morning Aaliyah graduated from Columbia Law School, Maya stood in the front row of the auditorium, tears streaming down her face. It had been 2 years since that terrifying night when FBI agents had moved her from safe house to safe house, and now she was watching her little sister walk across the stage to receive a law degree. Cole sat beside Maya, his own eyes bright with pride. Over the past 2 years, he'd built his Atlanta company into something he actually respected, a tech firm focused on financial transparency tools for small businesses. The irony wasn't lost on him that David Harrison's crimes had inspired Cole to create software that would prevent similar frauds. But today wasn't about redemption or justice. Today was about Aaliyah. As she accepted her diploma, Aaliyah searched the crowd until she found Cole's face. The smile that passed between them contained everything. Their first night in the storm, their desperate phone calls during her hardest semester, their weekend visits that had kept their relationship alive across hundreds of miles. After the ceremony, they met outside the law building. Maya hugged Aaliyah so tightly that other graduates had to walk around them. I'm so proud of you, Maya whispered. Mama would be so proud. Their mother had died when Aaliyah was 16, never getting to see either of her daughters graduate from college, much less law school. The mention of her made Aaliyah's throat tight. Cole waited his turn, and when Maya finally released her sister, he pulled Aaliyah into his arms. Counselor Brooks, he said, grinning. Not yet. Aaliyah laughed. I still have to pass the bar exam. You'll pass, Cole said with certainty. And then what? It was the question they'd been dancing around for months. Aaliyah had job offers from 3 prestigious New York firms, but she also had an offer from a smaller firm in Atlanta that specialized in corporate whistleblower cases. The choice felt symbolic of everything she'd been wrestling with since that first night in Cole's mansion. Actually, Aaliyah said, her voice gaining strength, I've been thinking about that. What if I don't take any of the offers? Cole's eyebrows rose. What do you mean? What if I start my own practice? Small, focused on helping people like Maya. People who know something's wrong but don't know how to make it right safely. The idea had been growing in Aaliyah's mind for months. Every time she read about another corporate scandal, Another whistleblower who'd been destroyed for telling the truth. She felt that familiar fire in her chest, the same fire that had made her step forward in David Harrison's trial. Maya grabbed Aaliyah's hand. That's exactly what the world needs. Cole was quiet for a long moment, and Aaliyah felt her heart sink. Maybe he thought it was too risky, too idealistic. Where would you base it? He asked finally. Atlanta, Aaliyah said without hesitation. Where all started. Cole's smile was slow and brilliant. I might know someone who could help with the tech infrastructure. Security systems, encrypted communications, that kind of thing. Are you offering to be my business partner, Mr. Harrington? I'm offering to be your partner in everything, Ms. Brooks. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with possibility. They weren't just talking about business anymore. That evening, at the graduation dinner Cole had planned at a small restaurant in Brooklyn, he stood up to make a toast. The place was intimate, just Aaliyah, Maya, and a few classmates she'd grown close to over the past 3 years. 2 years ago, Cole began. Aaliyah walked into my life during a storm. She was scared, brave, angry, and brilliant all at once. She still is. Aaliyah felt her cheeks warm as everyone laughed softly. But what I've learned about Aaliyah is that she doesn't just survive storms. She creates change because of them. And I can't wait to see what she builds next. Are you inspired by Aaliyah's journey from maid to lawyer? Tell us about a time you turned a difficult situation into an opportunity. And if this story is moving you, make sure to subscribe for more incredible tales of transformation. As the evening wound down, Aaliyah realized that for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid of what came next. She was excited. 1 year later, Aaliyah Brooks Legal Services occupied the entire second floor of a renovated building in downtown Atlanta. The space was modern but warm, with glass conference rooms and comfortable seating areas where nervous clients could tell their stories without feeling judged. Cole's security company, Transparency Tech, operated from the floor above, creating a unique partnership that had attracted national attention. Together, they'd handled 17 whistleblower cases, securing $23 million in settlements and protections for their clients. But success brought its own complications. We need to talk about the Washington Post interview, Maya said, walking into Aaliyah's office with a steaming cup of coffee and a concerned expression. Maya now worked as the client services coordinator for the firm, a role that utilized her experience as a whistleblower while keeping her safely away from any potential retaliation. The transformation from frightened witness to confident advocate had been remarkable to watch. What about it? Aaliyah asked, not looking up from the brief she was reviewing. They're going to ask about you and Cole, about whether your relationship creates conflicts of interest, about whether clients can trust you to be objective. Aaliyah finally looked up, her pen clenched tightly in her hand. Our relationship makes us stronger advocates. Cole's security expertise has kept 3 clients safe from corporate retaliation. I know that. You know that. But perception matters in this business. It was an old argument, but one that had gained urgency as their firm's profile grew. Some legal blogs had questioned whether Aaliyah's relationship with Cole compromised her ability to represent clients against corporate interests. Others suggested that their romantic story overshadowed the serious legal work they were doing. Are you saying we should break up for the sake of the business? Aaliyah asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Maya held up her hands. I'm saying you should be prepared for the questions, and maybe you should decide together how you want to answer them. That evening, Aaliyah and Cole sat on the balcony of their shared Atlanta apartment, the city skyline glittering before them. They'd moved in together 8 months ago, and the space reflected both their personalities. Aaliyah's law books mixed with Cole's tech gadgets, her plants thriving alongside his minimalist furniture. Maya thinks the post-interview is going to be hostile, Aaliyah said, curling up in the patio chair beside him. Cole reached for her hand. What do you think? I think I'm tired of having to justify loving you. The words came out fiercer than she'd planned, but she didn't take them back. For 3 years, their relationship had been scrutinized, analyzed, and questioned. The poor black woman and the rich white man. The former maid and the CEO. The whistleblower and the corporate executive. So let's stop justifying it, Cole said quietly. Aaliyah turned to look at him. What do you mean? Cole stood up and walked to the edge of the balcony, his hands gripping the railing. When he turned back to her, his expression was determined. Marry me. The words hit Aaliyah like a physical force. What? Cole dropped to one knee right there on the balcony, pulling a small black box from his pocket. I mean it, Aaliyah. Marry me. Let's stop explaining our relationship to everyone else and start building our life together officially. Aaliyah's heart hammered against her ribs. Cole, this is crazy. We can't get engaged just to make a point to critics. I'm not asking you to make a point, Cole said, his voice steady. I'm asking you to marry me because I love you. Because you make me want to be better than I ever thought I could be. Because when you walk into a room, everything else disappears. He opened the box, revealing a simple solitaire diamond that caught the city lights and threw them back in brilliant fragments. Because 3 years ago, you trusted me with your truth, and I want to spend the rest of my life being worthy of that trust. Tears blurred Aaliyah's vision. This wasn't how she'd imagined getting engaged, not in response to media pressure or public criticism. But looking at Cole's face, she realized that none of that mattered. What's your take on workplace relationships? Can love and business success coexist? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like this video if you're rooting for Aaliyah and Cole. Yes, she whispered, and then louder yes. As Cole slipped the ring on her finger, Aaliyah felt something settle in her chest. Not just happiness, but certainty. The wedding took place on a warm Saturday morning in October, in the garden of Maya's new house in Atlanta. It wasn't the grand affair that magazines might have expected, but it was perfect, intimate, meaningful, and surrounded by the people who had supported them through everything. Maya served as maid of honor, her speech bringing tears to everyone's eyes as she talked about watching her little sister transform from a scared girl hiding in safe houses to a confident woman who'd built her own law firm. Cole's best man was James, the FBI agent who'd coordinated Maya's protection and had become an unlikely friend over the years. But the most surprising moment came during the ceremony itself, when Aaliyah paused in her vows to address the small crowd. 3 years ago, I was a maid in Cole's house, terrified that my past would destroy both our futures. Today, I'm a lawyer, an advocate, and a woman who's learned that love isn't about finding someone to complete you. It's about finding someone who inspires you to complete yourself. She turned back to Cole, her voice growing stronger. You didn't save me, Cole. You saw me, and that made all the difference. Cole's own vows were simpler, but no less powerful. Aaliyah, you taught me that strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about choosing to act despite your fear. You've made me braver, kinder, and more honest than I ever thought possible. I promise to spend every day earning the trust you've given me. The reception was held in the same space, with string lights creating a canopy of stars above the guests. As Aaliyah and Cole danced to their first song as a married couple, Maya watched from the edge of the garden, her own heart full. Beautiful wedding, a voice said beside her. Maya turned to see James approaching with 2 glasses of champagne. Thank you for coming, she said, accepting the glass. Wouldn't have missed it. Your sister's become quite the force of nature. Maya smiled. She always was. She just needed to remember it. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the happy couple sway to the music. I have some news, James said quietly. The Justice Department wants to meet with Aaliyah about heading up a new task force. Corporate accountability, whistleblower protection. Based in D.C., Maya's eyebrows rose. Does she know? Not yet. I wanted to tell you first. See if you think she'd be interested. Maya considered this. A federal task force would be the ultimate validation of everything Aaliyah had built, but it would also mean leaving Atlanta, leaving the firm she'd created, potentially leaving Cole. She'll want to discuss it with Cole, Maya said finally. But James? I think she's ready for whatever comes next. Later that evening, as the reception wound down and guests began to leave, Aaliyah and Cole found themselves alone in the garden, her wedding dress trailing in the grass as they walked. No regrets? Cole asked, squeezing her hand. Aaliyah looked back at the house where her sister lived safely, where friends had gathered to celebrate their love, where she'd been able to speak her truth without fear. Then she looked ahead, toward a future full of possibilities she couldn't have imagined when she first knocked on Cole's door. "None," she said firmly. "Not one." Above them, the October sky was clear and full of stars. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rumbled. Not the threatening storm that had brought them together, but the promise of rain that would help new things grow. And in that moment, Aaliyah Brooks Harrington felt something she'd never experienced before. Complete peace with exactly where she was and excitement about where she was going. What did you think of Aaliyah and Cole's journey? Which part of their story resonated most with you? Let us know in the comments. And if you love this tale of transformation and love, make sure to subscribe for more inspiring stories. Remember, sometimes the most beautiful beginnings come from the stormiest nights. The storm that had brought them together was finally over, but the life they'd built together was just beginning.